Hey everyone, this is Ray. I just want to come on and share my testimony. So, um, in 2018, I found out I was pregnant with a baby boy. Um, and for the most part, my pregnancy was pretty uneventful. Um, I remember at one point, they did his scans and they said, oh, his kidney seems to be a little enlarged, so you're going to have to get ultrasounds weekly. Monthly, excuse me. And um, and then we'll check his kidneys every month. So I said, okay, no big deal. And they said if he reaches a certain point in his gestation, then he will not have to, or that it won't affect him, basically. And so I remember the second to last appointment that we had before he was born. They checked his kidneys and said, his kidneys are fine. They're the size they need to be. They haven't grown, they haven't shrunk. So they're the size that they need to be. But another issue came up. They were checking his ultrasounds and saw that he was not getting enough oxygen through the placenta. So they monitored me for a few days, um, and then this was on a Thursday, so that Monday they took me back into the ultrasound room, said he's still not getting enough oxygen, so we're gonna take him out by C-section. He was 30 weeks, 6 days. And I remember sitting there in the room and I looked down at my belly. I said, okay, Christian, I feel like you're telling mommy you're ready to come out. And so, and funny enough, he kicked me almost as if to say, yeah, I am. Um, so long story short, they took him out by C-section. And while I was laying on the table, um, I just remember having peace. And God was saying to me, and I believe God was telling me, like, he's gonna be okay. He's gonna be fine. So in my mind, I just thought, okay, they're gonna take him out. He may be a little early. He may have to be in the NICU for a while, but at the end of all of it, he's going to be fine. Um, and so at that point, I didn't stress about it when he came out and he didn't cry. I didn't think anything of it. And so even when they wheeled me down to the NICU, um, I didn't think, it never once crossed my mind that he was going to die. Like, it never once crossed my mind because I was like, God said he's going to be okay. And so, um, so as time went on, first the doctors were saying, okay, he's gonna have to stay in until his original due date, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Little did we know that that was not going to be the case. So Christian ended up being in the NICU for about 8 months. I had him in January. We didn't take him home until August. And throughout that time, I remember multiple times when the doctor would take us to the side and say, Christian is really sick. Christian is really sick. We're not sure what's wrong. We don't know, we're going to do this test. We're going to run this test. We're going to do this and see what we find. And so as time went on, I realized, like, okay, he's not as fine as I thought he was going to be. But nonetheless, I still said, okay, God said he was going to be okay. And so I remember when they sat us down in the room, they took us to this little office. They sat us down and they told us, they said, they were pretty blunt about it and said, listen, your baby is dying. Your baby is dying. And at this point, we're just patching him up. We don't know what's wrong. And so we're going to, just extend you guys this option, saying basically either you can hold your baby until he dies or we can keep patching him up. And I just broke down. I just remember breaking down, crying, like, God, you said he was going to be okay, And so I remember sitting there and I said, God, I'm not gonna make that decision to either let my baby die or to let my baby die. I'm not gonna make that decision. You're gonna have to make that decision. So I told him, I said, keep patching him up, keep patching him up, because I'm not going to decide for my baby to die. I'm not going to make that choice. And so as time went on, so they kept patching him up. And shortly after that is when they found out he had an adrenal gland deficiency, which was the cause of a lot of his sickness. So, so I just remember thinking, like, can you imagine if I had made that decision? But anyway, so as time went on, we started preparing to bring him home. And so I was so happy that we were going to be able to bring him home. I was super happy. And so I just remember thinking, like, yeah, God, you said he was going to be okay. And now here we are. We're getting ready to bring him home. So funny enough, the day that that we were getting ready to bring him home, I went to my doctor's office to actually get birth control. And she told me, nope, too late. And so she told me that I was 4 weeks pregnant. And I remember laughing, and I was like, there's no way. It's like, I haven't even gotten Christian home yet. How am I going to be pregnant with another baby? And I just remember sitting there, because I think the doctor went to go run a second test. And I remember sitting there, and as clear as I could possibly hear it, there was a voice that I believe God was saying, keep your baby. Like, you are going to keep your baby. And so I said, okay, well, then that's what it is. So fast forward to once we brought Christian home. It was the day that we brought Christian home that I found out I was pregnant. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, wow, this is going to be crazy. So fast forward to Thanksgiving. So the night before Thanksgiving, it had snowed really, really bad. And I remember walking into the house, and I remember just on my way walking to the door saying, thank you, God, because I was just feeling so grateful that I was getting to come home to my kids and my husband. And then my in-laws were going to come the next day. And I just remember it feeling like nothing could possibly go wrong. Like, I just remember feeling like nothing could go wrong. And so then the next morning, actually that night I was preparing food for the next day, and I heard Christian. And so I ran to his bedside because I thought his trach had come out. And so he was talking, and I just remember running over there, and I'm like, looking around for his trach, and it was in place, and he was fine. He was just sitting there kicking his little feet, just talking. And I recorded him that night, and I just remember thinking, like, oh my goodness, like, this is too perfect. He's talking on Thanksgiving, like. And so he went to sleep the next morning. He was talking like normal, or he was talking again. And I remember I called my family, and they got to see him. He was, I was holding him, and he was staring out the window looking at the snow. And I just remember thinking how perfect this day was. And so we laid him down for his nap. He started to get a little fussy, so we laid him down so that way he could take his nap. And I was cooking, and I remember telling Gianni, I said, Gianni, go check on your brother for me. Tell me if he's awake or if he's sleeping. And so he said, brother's awake. And I said, okay. So I kept cooking, and I was like, you know what? I need to go check on him. I'm gonna go check on him just to make sure. And so I remember walking over there, and I called him. I said, Christian, and got no response. I touched his hands, and I got no response. And so I started trying to shake him awake and got no response. And at that moment, I just went into panic mode. And I just started screaming for my husband. And I just remember thinking, like, no. Like, this can't be happening. Like, this can't be happening. And I was just thinking, like, God, you said he was going to be okay. He can't be. Like, you're going to bring him through this, like you've brought him through many other challenges. And so even when the paramedics were working on him, I just kept saying, you know what? No, I'm not giving up until he gives up. I'm not giving up until he gives up. And so I remember when the paramedics pronounced him as dead, there's no feeling in the world that can describe what that feels like. And all I could do was pray. And so that night, we actually went and stayed at a hotel because we didn't want to be in the house. And I remember just sitting in the tub praying, like, God, you have got to get us through this. Like, you have to. And then slowly God started revealing things to me and showing me that, through this, he was there the whole time. From the first ultrasound, when they were looking at his kidneys, if they hadn't been looking at his kidneys, then they probably wouldn't have found the issue with his oxygen until it was too late. And then just all the challenges that he went through, God brought him through each one. And even right before he died, I remember going through the mail, and we had received a letter from from a funeral home. And so I remember looking at it saying, why do we need this? Like, we don't need this. But I kept it. For whatever reason, I kept it, and I just set it to the side. And when we were planning or trying to figure out, his arrangements, once he passed, that flyer came to mind, and that's the place we went to. And the lady that we dealt with, she was extremely kind. She wasn't like pushing for like what's the word, like she wasn't trying to force us to buy the most expensive things and stuff like that. But yeah, so we went with them. We were able to afford his services, and they were able to add a lot of extra things for us, which was extremely kind of them. And so I remember one night talking to my aunt, and she was telling me, she was like, asking me, she was like, what do you need right now? And so I told her, I said, what I need, like, no one can give me. And what it was I needed to know that he was okay. I needed to know that he wasn't suffering before I came in to see him. And so I was just crying and crying, because the biggest thing that came to my mind was like, was he crying for me? Was he crying for me? Was he gonna be mad with me because I didn't get to him in time? And so in that moment, I remember the Holy Spirit saying, I've already given you the answer to that. I told you he was going to be okay. And so in that moment, I just broke down and said, oh my God, you've already told me. You were preparing me for this day from day one. And so through this entire journey, like, God, I've seen God's hand in everything, through his birth, his life, his death, like everything. And from that point forward, like, that was one of my major turning points when it came to trusting God, because God did what no one else could do, and that was give me peace of mind. And so I'm extremely thankful. I'm extremely thankful that God has been there to carry us through. And he's been there throughout everything. And so I just want to encourage you guys, like, when I tell you that trusting God is the best thing you could do, the best thing you could do, because there's going to be situations, I'm sure, if there hasn't already, there's going to be a lot of situations where nobody else can get you through but God. And having that peace of mind to know that God is going to help you through everything has got to be the most peaceful thing I've ever experienced. But yeah, this video is already kind of long, so I don't want to make it too much longer, but that's my testimony. And I hope that you guys are blessed by it. And like I said, the take home message is just trust God.